All right, and as we continue giving you reaction on the 2020 Matric Results, we're now joined by NAPTOSA's Executive Director, Mr. Basil Manuel. Basil, always a pleasure to see you, so thank you for joining us here on SABC News this afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for the invite.
You're most welcome. You released a statement, I believe, yesterday, saying it was entitled Triumph in the Face of Adversity. So I take it you're generally happy with the results, or the Matric 2020 results that came out?
There are many things about the results that do make us happy. We are certainly happy with the pass percentage. We are happy with the quality of passes.
Yeah.
And that doesn't, however, mean that there aren't things of concern. But we are particularly happy because in the face of what our learners and our teachers were staring into, they still triumphed. And that is the source of our being pleased and happy with the outcomes.
Yeah. Mr. Manuel, one of the things that you raised in your statement that you said was of particular concern is the dropping of pure maths for maths lit. And I think you said the number was at 15,000 candidates who had dropped to maths lit. You've seen this as a way to raise the pass rate. Can you elaborate on that for us? What exactly do you then base that on?
First of all, these statistics are from the department themselves because they come out of the exams. That compared to 2019, there are 15,000 less learners that offered pure maths or core maths, as we call it. Now, given that there were 74,000 more matriculants in the NSC, it is even a bigger drop. Now, we are questioning the cause of this. Why is there such a big drop? Is it because people are chasing results, that they don't want anybody to have a poor result, and so they shepherd children into doing maths lit? And if that is so, we want this looked at and we want it carefully investigated, simply because even a bad, or well, not a bad, but even less than what is an exceptional mark in pure maths is often better than a mark in maths lit, simply because it gives you access to greater opportunities of study. But what we are saying is we should be encouraging more learners to be doing pure maths because it's in the interest not only of the learner but of the country. We need more children to be offering pure maths given the trajectory that all countries should be on in terms of IT, technology and so on. And hence the drop off by 15,000 is disconcerting. And I'm sure nobody will disagree about the need to be concerned.
What would you say if it was, you said this needs to be investigated. What would you say if it turns out that it's the teachers themselves and maybe some members of your own union who are encouraging learners to perhaps drop from what we used to call higher grade maths, pure maths I suppose it's called now, to maths lit? What would you say if it turned out that it was actually the teachers who perhaps are finding it difficult to teach some learners pure maths?
Well, in fact, that is what we want to investigate. If it's done for the right reasons, then we have to take a step back. But 15,000 is an enormous number.
Yeah.
And let me be clear, this is not the first time we are seeing this. It's been a slippery slope that we've been on. Since about 5 years ago, the numbers have declined regularly, irrespective of whether it's a NAPTOSA member or not. If it is for the wrong reasons, then we've got to correct it. Because simply getting better results is not a good enough motivation to change the life chances of learners or, in fact, impact on the country's future, because that is what we are doing. So we are saying, irrespective, we need to look at it and we need to be encouraging more children to be taking pure maths.
And I'm wondering, why is it that it seems a lot easier to drop from pure maths to maths lit? I mean, in our days, it was a big deal, if one had to drop to standard grade. But now it seems that it's an easy thing to do, and maths doesn't change. It's maths; it stays the same. So I'm wondering why it seems as though learners are maybe having more difficulty when it comes to maths. And this is coming from someone who wasn't even that great at maths, I must say. So I'm just wondering why it seems that it's a lot harder for learners now.
Remember that you can't compare maths lit to what was standard grade maths before. It's very different. It's a completely different subject. And of course, it is much, much different. But it also has its own demands, because maths lit, if you are unable to read with good understanding, it also impacts on your results. However, pure maths is much more difficult. We acknowledge that. But what we are saying is that notwithstanding, it can't be true that fewer and fewer children are competent in mathematics. What we've got to do is also look at the grounding, because it doesn't start in matric. It doesn't start with the change there. It starts much lower down, because if grounding is not correct, now we are talking about in the secondary schools, then of course the children won't have the confidence to continue. And a lot of work has to be done at maths. Now, it's not the first time we're having the conversation. It's not the first intervention that will happen. And some of them have been successful. So we need to go back to the drawing board and see what worked. Yeah. And we need to encourage more schools to utilize what works.
Yeah. Speaking of what works, there was a lot of patting on the back of themselves, I would say, by the Department of Basic Education, and talking about the fact that they managed to stabilize the school environments. Also, kind of applauding teachers and learners as well. One of the things that was said is that there were lessons that were learned from last year, obviously having dealt with the pandemic and the fact that we are still in the pandemic this year in 2021. Are you confident that this year those lessons that they claim to have learned, or they say they have learned, will indeed be implemented, and that things will be better, not just for the matric results at the end of the year, but certainly for learners and teachers all round at schools?
At first look, we've started off on a shaky footing.
Yeah.
Because notwithstanding the reassurances of readiness, there are many schools that are partially ready for the reopening that we've had, because basic things like PPEs have not been supplied to the correct measure. Now, that is a little irritating, because every province knows exactly what schools need to be safe environments. And that is why we constantly, as unions, not only as NAPTOSA, the other unions as well, alert the ministry to some of the things happening, remembering that she gets reports from the provinces. And some of those reports, honestly, are not completely factual. And that is why we play such an important role. Remember, we support the return to schools, but we support it on certain conditions. And those conditions are vital for the survival of our children and our teachers, but more for their mental health. They must feel safe, because safety is a feeling first. So are the lessons learned? Apparently not completely, but there are lessons that have been learned, and let's acknowledge that. But we've got to do more when it comes to psychological support of our teachers, and of course, by extension, our learners. We've got to take the whole idea of blended learning, which would now include face-to-face as well as online learning, a little further. We are paying lip service to it, but we haven't shown the poorest communities that we are actually making a difference there. And I'm not talking about putting a tablet in every child's hand. I'm talking about taking lessons for our grade 11s of 2021 to the churches, to the mosques, to the temples, so that the children don't have downtime. Because the lesson we've learned from 2020 into 2021 is that our current grade 12s are sitting with a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Sometimes incomplete syllabi from grade 11, and then the grade 12 work. Heaven forbid that we would have any disruption. That applies far more pressure on your matriculants as well as your teachers, who are already teaching extra lessons and already teaching over weekends. So it's a mountain to climb, but let's learn from what we know. We haven't completely learned, no.
All right. Mr. Basil Manuel, always a pleasure having you here on our show. Thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you very much. You have a good day further.
Same to you. Basil Manuel representing NAPTOSA this afternoon and talking about the Matric results. And of course, they released a statement saying that the students were triumphant in the face of adversity. Well, Limpopo